So this book was another one that I got at the Mattoon Library Book Fair. It's a love inspired. That means they're going to give you a Bible phrase before you read the book to kind of give you a guidance of where the book is going. I grabbed it based on the cover alone because my heart belongs to cowboys. It is as evident as ever because I watch the Cowboy Way Alabama every freaking Sunday. But there's the book cover. And the author is Allie. Now I'm going to read the back to you. Healing the Cowboy's Heart. When Luke Buckton left Blue Thorn Ranch, he hoped to return in a blaze of rodeo glory. Instead, he's limping home with a busted leg. To get back on the circuit, he'll need a physical therapist. Ruby Sheldon's help. 6 years ago, he left Ruby behind, convinced she was too innocent for such a public life. Now his high school sweetheart is stronger, tougher, and even more captivating. A high-profile success story like this could make Ruby's career. All she has to do is rein in Luke's bullheadedness, heal his injuries, and hope his reckless charm doesn't trample her heart again. The Blue Thorn Ranch, where new beginnings begin, Texas style. Okay, now we're going to get to the Bible verse. Well, I guess we're going to get to the little tease first. You're punishing me, he huffed. I'm treating you. You're the one who set your ambitious goal on the tight time frame. It's not that the exercises, darling, it's the attitude. You want me to hurt. She took the bull by the horns. I do not want you to hurt. He stopped her again. You should. I hurt you. It took Ruby a moment to decide how to respond. Yes, you did. For a penny, in for a pound. You hurt me deeply, Luke Brockton. Luke stopped walking, holding her gaze for a moment. His blue eyes looked like depths that went on forever. I know that. Did you know it when you left? Did you think about it at all? I wouldn't let myself think about it at first. I let all the dreams and the money dangling in front of my face crowd it out. You said such hurtful things. She heard him sigh. I needed to burn the bridges behind me. I figured we'd both be better off if you hated me. It doesn't work that way, Luke. Now, we're going to move forward. The Bible phrase that you're to be thinking about during this book: my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12:9. Now we're going to get to the, look at this. This is how many good parts that I found in this book. Okay. I think I marked this because I wanted you to know that Luke Brockton was from the Blue Thorn Ranch, and pain came with every aspect, even a 1,700 pound bucking bull. Every bull rider knew the pain that went with the territory, but you had to cowboy up after an injury. And he decided to go back home to nurse his wounds. Or did he decide to go back home because that's where he knew he left the love that he left behind? And we'll let you think about that. Page 9. Only the two others his doctor had... I'll get it right in a minute. Only the two others his doctor had sent here weren't up to the job, at least not by his estimation, and left going all the way to Austin to get treatment or putting up with Ruby. Putting up with Ruby. As if it was a nagging itch or uncomfortable chair, instead of being the biggest regret and saddest chapter of his life. He never quite forgiven himself for how he broke her heart. Despite 6 years of steady effort to keep all thoughts of her firmly out of his head, it stuck in his craw. He needed to help her now. Or he needed to help her, yeah. And he wasn't sure how he could choke that down, if she might be the only person in 20 miles who knew him well enough to get him where he needed to go. I was hoping to avoid this, he grumbled. I think I'd rather cut off my leg than give Ruby the chance to order me around. And of course his grandma is the one to tell him, buck up, basically. Okay, page 15. The boy that had made her feel pretty and full of possibility, only to turn her around months later and declare her not pretty enough and without enough potential to follow in him to rodeo stardom. Suddenly she realized it had been half a minute or so, and neither of them had spoken. I know I'm giving you little tidbits here and there, but I want you to read the story, and I want to pick out these parts that kind of, make you think. I got something cute to tell you. Earlier today, I thought that this was a spider. I really did. And it was my own asterisk. Go figure. And I jumped. Like, hello, it's your own asterisk. Anyway, page 24. Grace was strong enough to extend grace to the man who had hurt her so deeply back then? The man who, the moment suddenly struck her as equally important to her as it was to him. If she claimed to come as far as she had from the teenager Luke had left behind, the proof would come in what she did next. Page 39. You get a question, so I get a question. Fair's fair. Ruby sat back. That's not how this goes. She returned her hand to above his feet. Again, please. 5 times each. Luke began his exercises, launched a running commentary as he did so. I'm guessing no on account of I'd probably heard about it if you were, and your name's still Sheldon. Lots of women keep their names when they marry these days, Luke. She noticed his left foot was raising lower and lower with each attempt. Numbness aside, Luke had lost most of the muscle strength. Maybe, but not you. You'd be Mrs. Whoever or Mr. Whoever is there. And Ruby grabbed Luke's ankles and gently tugged them toward her. It was time to let Luke, my tongue is tied, know that she wasn't putting up with any of his antics. She could only throw him off balance, literally, any time she'd choose to do so. And I'll let you read on that. Page 41. So have there been any potential Mr. Whoever's? He leaned in and asked. Ruby knew this was a diversion when she saw one, and as a matter of fact, just shift a less taxing exercise and said, as a matter of fact, there have been, not names that I'm going to share with the likes of you. Gran told me you dated an insurance salesman from Waco from time to time. An insurance salesman, he coded the last 3 words with generous disdain. Ruby slipped her file shut. If you already knew the details of my social life, why'd you ask? She pointed to his leg in unspoken command to do the current exercise again. I wanted to hear it from you. You wanted to gloat over my small-town choice of beaux, you mean? Well, that too, he grinned. Okay then, let's hear about your relationships. The serious ones, the ones lasting more than a night or 2 in town. Luke stretched his leg toward her hand, and his voice tightened with effort. Don't do those. You mean you don't do those anymore? That jab left her mouth before she could catch it back, before the serious with her, and they both knew it. It stopped Luke dead in his tracks. I suppose I deserve that, he said after a long pause. So we're going to talk about it then. No, Ruby shot back. We're going to skip on down here a little bit. If he started talking about it with Ruby, he'd wind up apologizing, and he wasn't ready to do that, of course. He knew that he'd broken her heart, but he didn't believe that he'd made the wrong decision. She wasn't rodeo material. Even if he had taken her with him, the circuit would have been eaten her alive. The press much liked him better with a rotation of pretty little things hanging on his arm, according to Nolan Ryan, his agent. Luke's good looks were his asset, and he's single, ladies, as was a much part of his marketing, as much as show the camera loved his Buckton blue eyes. Page 54. Ruby made herself sit down and look at him in the eye. Maybe she could get him to see reason before this doomed stunt went any further. Don't say what's wrong with you. Don't tell you what you refuse to hear. You expect me not to only stand by and watch you potentially get yourself killed, but you want me to play a guest star. Ruby Sheldon, therapist to the late, great Luke Buckton, because trust me, Luke, that's exactly what you'll be. You cannot do this. I'm picking out the parts that I hopefully get you motivated to pick this book up. Page 68. Even if he's never said it, even if the opposite, he knew what he did was wrong. I think he regrets it too. Even if he can't bring himself to admit it, Granny B released Ruby's arm and patted her on the shoulder. You've got a special kind of strong to be here. I know it. I see it. He'll see it, too, when he comes to his senses. That was his grandma talking to her, giving her a pep talk. Page 79. I gotta find where I marked it. Ruby grabbed his arm. So that's it. You're gonna ignore me. You disregard your doctors. You pay no attention to the people who want the best for you. And when we tell you that you're punishing or pushing yourself too hard, but you give some mean little kid the power to knock you off your treatment, the Luke I knew would be stomping mad, just itching to put that brat in his place. We need that man, because that man is the only one strong enough to do what you're aiming to do. Luke shot up out of his chair faster than she'd ever seen him move. You think that I'm not mad? He was close to yelling. Ruby felt her spine straighten, felt more resolve meet his glare for glare. I think you're mad enough. Somehow, in that space of 2 sheets of paper, she moved from the trying to hold him back, seeing how he needed to go full force, all out or nothing. If he did at that and he failed, he stood a chance of healing. But if he didn't, if he went down without a fight, he'd never be the same. He'd never be a whole person. He'd never just be the man who used to be Luke Buckton. She knew this because she understood him, saw how his heart and soul worked, just the same as she did back when she loved him, because a part of her still did care. Ruby grabbed the file and thrust her hand through the loop and carried the balance ball, whacking Luke's chair as she yanked it off the floor. It was heavy, but right now it was so emotional, and she felt like she could fling that thing across the bison pastures. Find that man, Luke. Make sure he's here when I come back on Friday. She banged that guest house door so loud that Gran was coming out the front door of their house to see what the matter was. Don't bother, he roared from the doorway. She turned and tossed her gear into the trunk of her car. Try and stop me. We're going to move on. Page 94. No, I think I know what's going on. Leave him be. But pray. I think he just found out that he's not in control of his own healing. And I doubt that's going to go down easy. Luke's got a little bit of me in him. He likes to control things. And that's not good. And when he can't control things, it gets him angry. Trying to find out why I marked this page. As he opened the guest house door, it struck him. Could it really be true? The great Luke Buckton was tired of buckle bunnies? Had grown jaded over false fawning beauties that used to be his favorite form of diversion? Had he grown up? Well, he was 24. Stranger things had happened. Page 136. It annoyed Ruby that she felt the heat rise in her cheeks, and it was foolish to think that she could get through his interview without her past relationship with Luke coming up, but she had hoped to get at least part of the first 5 questions. That was a long time ago. Yes, we have a bit of history, as you put it, but it mostly means I know him well enough to work with him. If that gives me an advantage to help him restore the function of his leg, then I'm glad for it. There's this little interview girl that he tries to flirt with. In a way, I think he tries to make her jealous, but it kind of backfires at him. And she kind of is, the girl who does the interview is used to cowboys, used to the way that they are, used to getting their way. And so he's using her as supposedly to promote a comeback, but yet at the same time it bites him in the rear. You have to read the book. Page 139. The moment Rachel was out of sight, Ruby turned to Luke. September. You told them you'd ride jetpack only 2 months from now? What happened to, well, maybe not the meanest bull. What were you thinking? He had told them that he was going to go back on the bull that injured his leg. And Ruby was the last to know. And needless to say, she didn't take it too well. After all, she's only his therapist. Okay. Page 146. I've gone 8 seconds on Jetpack twice before. That last ride was a fluke, a mistake on my part, because Ray Knight had got into my head and rattled me, and that will never happen again. That's the other bull rider. Page 162. Here's what's kind of cute. Ruby, she comes out and says what Rachel and her had discussed to Luke to finally, I think, drive it home that he's getting older, A. B, he needs to think about where he needs to be in life, and he should appreciate who's in his life. She called you an underdog. That was a bit of a shocker. He was more accustomed to the term champion or rising star. Well, if that's what it took to get folks rooting for him, he'd swallow the label. I can live with that. Besides, I'll only stay an underdog until the ride. Then what will you be? The question caught him up short, mostly because he didn't have an answer. He wouldn't be a champion. There wasn't enough of the season to put him back on top, and this was the only exhibition ride. Much as he hated to admit it, Ray was going to take the championship this year, and there wasn't much he could do about it. Everybody's favorite? That's not the same thing as champion. Ruby could follow his thoughts without him having to voice them. She knew how he saw the world, and he'd miss that back out on the circuit. He'd grown used to her companionship, a bit dependent on it. As if he was honest. You'll be there, won't you? San Antonio, I mean, you'll have to be. It wouldn't be right if you weren't there. We never talked about it. I didn't think if we had to. I figured you'd come. He hesitated for a moment before adding, I really want you to come. She smiled. I'll be there. Someone has to keep an eye on you while you go crazy celebrating your victory. Okay, it looks like I read on here. Celebrating. That's Nolan's job. He reached for Ruby's hand. I don't want you there as my babysitter. I want you there as my friend, as he ran a thumb along the back of her hand, the way he always used to all those years ago. He realized he didn't mean it then. He wanted her there as something more than just a friend. Come to San Antonio, see what the whole crazy thing is like. After the way he told her all those years ago that she couldn't come with him, couldn't be part of his life anymore. Once he went on the circuit, that was a loaded request, and she knew it. He left her behind, half to please his new agent, and half out of knowledge that Ruby wasn't cut out for that lifestyle. And she wasn't, back then. She was different now. He was too. The hard part rang. Okay, where the heck was that at? The hard parting rang dull and tinny in his ears now. More than a wild night, he craved someone he could trust, someone who believed in him for more than just his earning power or fan base, or how much that camera liked him. For him now, she'd be a perfect companion on the circuit, with one glaring exception: she'd never go. To pick up where they left off, where they truly left off, not just the pretense of a friendship they'd strung between them, she'd either need to leave Martin's Gap or he'd have to stay. Both were impossible, and they knew it. Still, as he stood there with her hand in the way it used to be between them, Luke found himself wanting that relationship back. He caught the spark of his touch in her eyes, and saw the what if. He began to think himself. Come to San Antonio, he repeated. It's beautiful there. We'll do it upright. I'll show you how it can be. He took her other hand so that they could be both held. I'll think about it, she said, with a voice a bit breathy. He gave her a smoldering smile. He still knew exactly how to sweep her off her feet. You do that. Not everything has changed. He could convince her to say yes. He could flood her with a charm until she couldn't think straight. At least that's what the old Luke would have done. He surprised himself by not wanting to pull that kind of stunt anymore. Who was this man now? Who wouldn't stoop to anything to get what he wanted? The answer came to him like a tap on the shoulder. The underdog. A man who knows the value of true friend. Blech, I can't talk tonight. Sorry, guys. The value of true friends or real loyalty. The difference about being pretty and beautiful had been no line. His suffering had helped him look past the superficial and understand what really mattered. In these past few weeks, Luke come to see the very things that made Ruby seem like a bad fit for every circuit back then made her the companion he needed now. San Antonio may be all they got together. They may return their separate lives after that, though he believed they'd always stay in touch from now on. As he squeezed her hands and headed back to her mom, San Antonio burned in his chest more than just his chance to meet the master of the Bull Jetpack. San Antonio would be the chance to give Ruby the farewell she deserved, because he knew now that a true cowboy is not the same thing as being left behind. The woman Ruby was now was no woman to be left behind, which made it all harder to know that she was a woman that he couldn't keep by his side. We're going to skip to page 171. Over the past few weeks, they managed to capture the best part of what they had back together back then. But at the same time, it was different, older, truer, if that was a word, because of who they were now. But this time, it wasn't a boy kissing a girl. It was a man kissing a woman, and the difference shook him. Ruby was warm and strong and equal. He hadn't expected that to course through him the way it did, but her strength lit something inside him that he long forgotten was even there. He spent the past years being liked, admired, wanted, pushed, pulled, and even judged, but kissing Ruby reminded Luke that it was like to be loved. When her arms slipped around his neck, a hole opened up inside him. One he kept covered for years. One he convinced himself didn't even exist anymore. Going on. Oh, 178. Looks like 179 is marked as well. We'll just have to see how far we go here. Not much more, though. Donna, your hair. Okay, there we go. Luke slumped down in his seat, running one hand through his hair. Oh, nothing about tomorrow is going to be easy. His eyes wandered to the chute gates again, and she could feel the tension radiate out around him. He lifted his gaze to take in the huge arena. But as tough as it is, I miss this. The lights, the sound, the crowd, the all or nothing of it. Life feels 200% in here. Always did. Tough, hard, but the highs were as high as the lows were the low, you know? She didn't. She could appreciate the spectacle, but live in a world like this? Do this week after week? Sure, not all the events were on his scale, but that wouldn't alter how foreign the world felt. The, quote, all or nothing, unquote, that he loved or had no appeal at all to her. How could she feel so much for this man and yet so little for the world he lived in? You've always belonged here. He must have caught the resignation in her voice, for then he turned to her. I belong with you. It took me all this time to figure it out again. How can we make this work is just another problem that we'll solve together, like we've solved all the other stuff. He ran a hand through her hair, sending tingles down her neck. I want to get on that bowl tomorrow, knowing that you're here waiting for me afterward. I'm not asking for more than tomorrow right now. He left a small kiss on her left cheek. The tenderness of that undid her more than the power of his earlier kisses. It made her mind spiral into all kind of what-ifs, fantasies about who they would be now. She knew those to be dreams, but didn't dream sometimes come true? Just as many times they didn't. Tomorrow would tell. She put her hand on top of Luke's. I think it's time we both get some rest, don't you? There you go, always looking out for me. He rose slowly, carefully unfolding his long legs from the tight stadium seating, and extended a hand to pull her up. I'll sleep better having kissed you. Am I allowed to say that? She laughed as she rose. It's cheesy, but I'll allow it. Okay, page 210. She once told her mama in a dramatic high school swoon that she'd never love again, the way she loved Luke. But it was true. Her love for him now was deeper and more true. Battle-tested and given with the grace of eyes wide open. I'm going to leave you wondering, did they get together? Did they not? Was she now, quote, a woman in the sense of being able to love him and the world that he lives in? Or was she not enough and didn't measure up, so therefore she couldn't live his life or live his world? One thing that this book really taught me is it's easy to look at the differences in each other, but when you're a book reviewer like myself, it's so easy to look at both sides of the story, like I do with when I give you guys my relationship advice. And sometimes, I won't lie, as I put on the Harlequin website the other day on Facebook, there's times that I do shout out loud at the characters in the book, just like I shout at you guys when you ask me these questions on Facebook. You know, it's amazing that, as a third party, how clear I can see your problems. But if it was me, myself, and I, I will say that there's been times that, rejection, fear of rejection, being scared, thinking that I'm not good enough. There's a lot of history there. It gets to you, And I will say what these two were able to find in this book, how they never really gave up on each other, is a once-in-a-lifetime love, and it's very rare. It exists in these books. It exists in Hallmark movies. I don't know if I can have that faith, if you will, to believe that love can conquer all, because I've seen love fail all. But I will give this book a 7. Because to me it was okay, but it didn't have that be-all, end-all kind of passion, kind of tenderness, kind of believability. Because second chances don't always happen. And that's what I'll leave you with tonight. I'll expand a little bit on that. For them in the book, it happened because both of them were open to that possibility. Do they happen in real life? Once in a lifetime. If you can open your heart up and not look at all the mistakes and not look at all the wrongdoings, not be accusing or point fingers or give accusations or reasons why you shouldn't talk to someone or shouldn't make that almighty reason to not try, then you will never be in love if you can hold grudges. It's like that old Judge song, love can build a bridge if you let it. I put if you let it in there. They didn't. But if you don't, then it is what it is. Until next time, stay tuned.